Hey, what's up? This is Caleb Ward, and in this After Effects tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create this epic sunrise effect. Alright, so before we get going, I want you to take a look at our final output here, and it's really pretty basic. We don't use Cinema 4D, and we don't use any sort of 3D models of any kind. It's actually utilizing the CC sphere effect to create this Earth here, and a little bit of optical flares from Video Copilot to create the sun. And besides that, it's a lot of stylization, so I would say out of 10, this tutorial is probably about a 4 out of 10 in difficulty. So let's hop in and create the cool effect. So the first thing that we're going to do is create a new project. So we're going to go to File, New Project, and we will not save this because it's already saved. All right, so inside our new project, I'm going to go ahead and import our image assets. And so I'm just going to double click inside our project panel here, and it's going to pop up all 4 of our reference images there. I'm going to go ahead and click Open. You'll find links to all of these image assets in the text document included in the download, which you can find at cward.org. So the first thing that we want to do is actually create compositions with the earth texture, the nighttime earth texture, and the cloud texture for the earth. And so to do that, I'm going to hit Command-N on my Mac, or you can navigate to Composition, New Composition, and I'm just going to call this Daytime Earth, and we're going to make sure that the width is set to 4000, height's 4000, and then our duration, instead of 1 second, we want it to be 10 seconds at 24 frames per second, and I'm going to click OK. So now we have a 10-second composition down here, and it is square. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag in our color map reference image here, and I'm going to go ahead and scale it down so we can kind of see. So as you can see, this map actually is a flattened Earth map, and so the edges here match the edges over here. So when we apply the sphere effect, hypothetically it should be seamless. So in order to do that, I'm just going to hit CC sphere and drag it onto our layer. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and scale up this Earth sphere here to where it fills most of the composition. Maybe something about there. Yeah, that's looking good. And by default, CC sphere actually has some shadow built into it, and we don't want that. We want it just to be flat because we're actually going to add in our lighting effect later whenever we are compiling all of our elements together. So in order to make it flat, I'm just going to click on shading here and turn our ambience up to 100. So now we have a completely flat image, and we want to make it rotate a little bit. So to do that, I'm going to just go ahead and move my current time indicator or playhead to the end of the composition here. And I'm going to pop up the rotation, and I'm going to set a keyframe for 0 at the very end. And I'm going to drag the playhead to the beginning, and we're going to set it to -35. And it all depends on how fast you want your Earth to spin. If you want it to be realistic, obviously you don't want it to spin very fast, if anything at all. But for our composition, we're doing something a little more fictional, and so we're going to have it rotate at just kind of a steady pace here. All right, so the Earth is spinning and the lighting is flat. The last thing I want to do is the colors are a little too vibrant for my taste here, so I'm going to just type in tritone here, and I'm going to apply the tritone effect to our layer, but by default it's a little too much, so I'm going to go in and I'm actually going to adjust the blend with original to about 80. That's fine. And so it kind of just cuts out on some of the saturation. Okay, so now what we're going to do is actually create our nighttime Earth, and so we're going to do that in a very similar way to the daytime Earth. So I'm just going to hit Command-N, or you can navigate to Composition, New Composition, and we have 4000 by 4000, 10 seconds, and hit OK. And you know what? I didn't even name this composition correctly, and I'm sorry about that. We're going to call this Nighttime Earth. So just like our daytime Earth, I'm going to go ahead and drag in our night layer here. And it's the same thing. It's a map of the world, and the good thing is it's actually centered in the exact same way as our colored map, and so it'll be a little bit easier to make sure that our nighttime and our daytime Earth match up perfectly. So instead of actually doing the CC sphere by hand again, I'm just going to go into our Earth daytime Earth composition, and I'm going to copy the CC sphere effect and paste it into our Earth here. So you'll notice that it's actually smaller than the Earth here, and so obviously that's not going to work, and so we're going to just have to adjust our composition as needed. And so the first thing that I can see is our Earth is not centered up at all, and so this little button right here actually will tell you if it's in the center of the composition, and so I can just go ahead and adjust this to make sure that it's perfectly centered. Cool. And I'm going to scale up the nighttime Earth to where it just about matches the composition over here. And what I can actually do is drag in the daytime Earth composition into our nighttime Earth composition to see if it matches up perfectly. And so I'm just going to move the daytime above the nighttime here. We can see that the nighttime looks like it's kind of peeking over just a little. And so I'm going to adjust the radius of the sphere here, and my computer's freaking out on us here. All right, so that's just about perfect there. Cool. All right, so that just about matches up. I'm going to go ahead and delete our daytime Earth composition out of our nighttime Earth composition. And so we have two compositions here, and the last thing that we want to create is our cloud composition. In order to create our cloud composition, I'm just going to hit Command N, and we'll call this clouds, and hit OK. And just like before, I'm just going to copy the CC sphere effect from our nighttime Earth, and let's go ahead and drag down our cloud layer, and I'm going to hit Command V to paste. And you can see that this one is actually gigantic, and so we can actually, let's select it here, and we're going to move our center to the very center of the composition and scale it down. So we want it to match up very similarly to the previous composition, and so in order to do that, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to drag down our daytime Earth, and I'm going to move our daytime Earth above the clouds here, and we're going to change the radius so that the clouds are just barely peeking over, and delete the daytime Earth layer. All right, so because we copied and pasted the effect from the nighttime Earth composition, we actually have the rotation already added in there, and so the clouds will rotate with the Earth. And if you want, it could rotate at the same speed, but you could slow it down a little bit, or perhaps you could even add in maybe a wave warp effect to make the clouds look like they're, moving around, or there's hurricanes going on. It really depends on whatever you want to do, but for our example, I'm just going to have it go ahead and rotate at the same speed. So the next thing that we want to do is actually assemble all of our elements together. So in order to do this, I'm going to create a new composition, hit Command N, and instead of 4000 this time, we actually want to do, let's do HD 1080 24, and as far as the duration goes, I'm actually only going to do 6 seconds instead of 10 seconds, just to keep it a little bit shorter. And I have incorrectly named our composition here. I'll just call this final composition. And I'm going to go ahead and grab our nighttime Earth, our daytime Earth, and our clouds and bring it down to our composition here. And so as you can see, they're way too big, and so I'm going to hit the S key and scale down all of our layers. And we probably want to move them to where the Earth is kind of taking up a good majority of the screen here, maybe right about there is good. And then I think it always looks a little bit better if the Earth is tilted just a little, so I hit the W key, or you can hit the rotation tool here and Just kind of spin it just a little bit. Yeah, something like right there. And so, yeah, that's about where we want it to be. It's looking good. So we want our layers to be in a very specific order. So I'm actually going to move our nighttime Earth to the bottom and our clouds layer to the very top. But I'm going to go ahead and turn off the eyedropper for the clouds and the daytime Earth to where we can just see the nighttime. And let me turn off this transparency here so it's a black background. All right, so before we get going any further, let's go ahead and stylize our nighttime Earth. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and apply a glow effect and apply it to our nighttime Earth. And so we're actually going to want to turn up our radius a little bit and maybe turn down the intensity, the threshold rather. Cool. And then instead of original colors, I'm going to do AB colors, and we're just going to choose a bright orange. And so the next thing that we want to do, and you can probably tell this already, the Earth is very blue, and if you go and look at reference images of what an Earth sunrise looks like, it's not typically this deep blue. And so I'm actually going to use the tritone effect to cut out some of this unnecessary saturation. And so the blacks will be fine, but I'm going to go ahead and turn up our blending with original, maybe just a little bit, maybe 50%, 51's fine. And then instead of the deeply saturated blue, we want to do maybe a desaturated somewhere around here. And then instead of regular white, we want it to map to maybe a little bit of a light tan color. Cool. So that basically just cut out on some of the deep saturation there. So our nighttime Earth is looking great. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the eyedropper for the nighttime Earth and turn on the eyedropper for the daytime Earth. And so the daytime Earth, we actually want to apply the same effect. So I'm going to, again, apply the tritone effect to the daytime Earth, but I'm going to turn it up to maybe about 70. I'm just going for realism here. I don't want the colors to be super saturated. I want it to be as realistic as a fictional VFX Earth can be. And so what we're actually going to do, and I'm going to go ahead and turn on the eyedropper for the nighttime Earth. So now we have the daytime over the nighttime. We're actually going to go in and simulate the sunrise here. So I'm going to go in and create a new mask, and I just went over here to the pen tool, and I don't want it to be a perfect circle, so I'm going to kind of create this wave shape here, and I'm just going to cut it out like this. And then instead of add, we want our mask to actually be set to subtract. So now that we've set it to subtract, we actually want to go in now and feather it out quite a bit. So now you can kind of see where this sunrise effect is going to come into play. So if we go ahead and select both of these Bezier handles here, we can see that we can kind of simulate a sun rising by just moving them in and out. So what I'm going to do is set a keyframe at, say, 1 second. And then we're going to go ahead and move to the very end, and with these two Bezier handles selected, we're going to kind of move this down to maybe about halfway. Okay, cool. That's looking great. So now we have, if we kind of scrub through here, we can see we have what's beginning to look like a sunrise. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the eye for our cloud layer. And as you can see here, you can't see anything behind it. And that's because the black is not transparent. So to do that, we're going to use one of my favorite quick tricks in After Effects and apply the Shift Channels effect to the cloud layer. And we're going to say take alpha from luminance. And so essentially what that did is that just made it to where the white shows up and the black is taken out, and there is transparency based on how much white is inside each pixel. So it actually is a smooth way to create some quick black keying, and it will actually retain color as well, which is important because if you use the screen transfer mode, it actually will not retain the color, which is bad if you want to give your video a little more tenacity. So as you can see here, our clouds are completely white, and it doesn't look right. If the sun was rising, the clouds would not be equally illuminated. And so in order to evenly color the clouds, I'm going to type in ramp and apply gradient ramp to our clouds here. And I'm going to move one handle over here, and then we have another handle here. I'm going to move the second one here, and we're going to go ahead and swap the colors. And so we don't want to do black and white. We probably want to do maybe a light gray and maybe a kind of a dark gray. And so I'm going to take a look and see when our sunrise starts. So it starts at 1 second. So I'm going to set a keyframe for our end ramp and start ramp here for our gradient. And I'm going to actually move them completely off the screen here. So now this is kind of what our composition will look like before the sun even rises. And in fact, I think that this gray might be even a little too bright. So I'm going to turn down the darkness just a little bit. And perhaps we actually want to add in a little bit of blue. Maybe right about there. Cool. And so we have our keyframes created here. And I'm going to scroll to the very end. And I'm going to grab our little handles here. And move them. So now we can see, if we kind of play this back, we have our two gradient ramp handles move as the sun rises. And it makes it look like the sun will be illuminating the clouds rather than the clouds just being all illuminated all at once. All right, so the next thing we want to do is actually create the glowing ridge effect. So we want the sun to basically come over the horizon, and it's causing such a bright glare that it actually is crushing the highlights, and it's making it look like it's just too intense for our camera to even look at it. And so to create this ridge effect, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate our daytime earth layer and drag it to the top here. And I'm going to hit M for our mask, and I'm actually just going to go ahead and delete our mask completely from the daytime earth layer. However, that being said, I'm actually going to go in and create a brand new mask for this newer layer, and I'm going to go ahead and just solo this daytime earth layer so we're not getting confused. And I'm going to kind of just paint in, or mask in rather, the portion of the edge where I want our ridge to be peeking over. And we'll set the mask to subtract again. So I'll kind of grab the handles here. Cool. I'm liking the way this is shaping up here. And so what we'll do here is, instead of it starting at the 1 second mark, I'm actually going to have it start at 0. And we're going to set a keyframe right there. And so the keyframe's at 0, and I'm going to go ahead and drag these two handles outside of the earth to where there's nothing. And I'm going to scrub forward to about, let's say, 4 seconds, and I'm going to move this down to where we can see a little bit of the ridge, and perhaps even we want the ridge to be a little more rounded here. Cool. So if we kind of scrub through, we can see that we have this growing ridge line here. And that's going to be the glowing area where our sun is peeking through. So I'm actually not liking the way this shape over here in the corner is shaping up to be. So I'm going to kind of make it a little more rounded. Okay. Cool. So it just kind of peeks through here. And so the next thing we want to do is actually apply a glow effect. And this time the glow effect is actually going to be very, very intense. So I'm going to set our glow threshold to 0. And I'm going to turn up our radius so that it's kind of shining beyond just the confines of the layer itself. And I think the intensity is fine, but the colors are definitely not where I want them to be. Instead of white, I want it to be kind of a bright orange, just like the sun. So I'm going to set our color A to orange, and our color B actually I'm going to set to white. So I'm going to turn off our mask by hitting the little toggle mask button there. And this is looking pretty good. I'm not loving the way that it's glowing here on the edge here. So what I can do is just turn up the intensity of the glow and the radius until it's exactly where I want it to be. And we could even maybe go in here to the shadows and turn up the blacks to where they're maybe right about there. Cool. Just stylize as needed. So now we can kind of see that we have a ridge and it slowly begins to fade on. And the last thing that I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and turn off the solo here. And so we should be able to see all of our layers together now. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to toggle the switches here and set our transfer mode to add. And that'll make it blend just a little bit better. And there's kind of a sharp edge here, and that's not exactly what I want it to be. And so I'm going to actually hit the F key with my daytime Earth, rather horizon composition selected. And so I'm actually going to hit the return key, and I'm going to name this horizon. And so I'm going to hit the F key, and that's going to feather out that edge right there to where it looks like it's blending just a little bit better. And because of that, perhaps we want to turn down our glow intensity just a little bit to maybe somewhere right about there. Cool. So now if we kind of scrub through here, we can see we have a ridge that kind of gets brighter, and then the entire Earth starts illuminating. So one quick thing that I see here is I don't want to see any orange on the ridge line here until maybe about 1.5 seconds in. So I'm actually going to hit the T key and set a keyframe for opacity at 100% at 1 second and 12 frames, and 0 at 0 second 0 frames. All right, cool. So let's scrub through here. Cool. It's looking great. And once we add in our sun element, it will actually look much, much better. So now let's create our outer atmosphere. So if you look at any reference photos of what the Earth from space looks like, there's a little bit of a glow around the entire thing. And that's just basically the ambient light bouncing off our atmosphere to create just a little bit of haziness around the Earth. So to do that, I'm just going to duplicate our daytime Earth layer as before, and I'm going to move it to the top. And before we forget, we're going to call this atmosphere. And I'm going to hit the M key and delete our mask that is on the Earth here. So I'm going to go ahead and solo this. In order to create the glowing atmosphere, I'm actually just going to apply the glow effect again to our atmosphere layer. And we're going to set our threshold to pretty low because I want basically the entire globe to glow. And we're going to turn up the radius maybe towards right about there. Cool. And then I'm going to set our composite original to none. And then our glow operation, I'm actually going to set it to silhouette alpha. And so you can see that this is kind of beginning to create this horizon here. And so we don't want our colors to be the original colors. I'm going to select A, B colors, and we'll do light blue. Click OK. And a little more of a vibrant blue on the outside there. And so the only thing I don't like here is we have a real harsh ridge line, and the only way that we can really get rid of that is by applying a blur effect. So I'm just going to apply the fast blur effect and turn it up to about 10. just to get rid of that harsh edge. And we'll go ahead and set our blending mode to soft light. Cool. And I'm going to go ahead and turn off the solo. And so now you can see that there's this nice little horizon atmosphere here. And so if we scrub through, we see that it also, because we have the add transfer mode applied to our horizon, it will actually interact with the bright horizon glow. So the next thing that we want to do is actually create contrast to our nighttime sky here, because it's a little flat. And so to do that, I'm going to go to Layer, New Solid, or hit Command Y, and we'll just call this Night Contrast, and hit OK. So I'm actually going to apply a fractal noise effect to this layer. And we can go ahead and actually scale it up a little bit, maybe bump up the contrast a little, and set our transfer mode to soft light. And so, as you can see, this isn't really going to work out well because it's a little too contrasted, but no need to fear. What I'm going to do is, with our pen tool selected, I'm going to kind of go in here and just select kind of the inner part of our globe and hit F and feather out the edges. Kind of drag these around to match up. And I'm going to turn down the opacity by hitting T here. Just a little bit. And then I'm actually going to apply a fast blur effect and turn it up just a little bit. So now you can just see, if we toggle the transparency here, there's just a little more tenacity in the nighttime sky. Cool, that's looking great. All right, so the next thing that I want to do is create our sun. And in order to do that, I'm actually going to be using Video Copilot's Optical Flares plugin. You could hypothetically create this sun effect using native plugins in After Effects, and if you're interested in doing that, I recommend checking out my How to Rig a Lens Flare in After Effects tutorial, which will show you how it's done. That process, though, does take a little while to do, and so if you happen to have the money and if you do a lot of motion graphics work, I highly recommend going ahead and getting optical flares. So for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm going to be using optical flares. So to create the flare, or the sun rather, I'm going to go to Layer, New Solid, and we'll call this Sun. And so what I'm going to do is, in the effects browser here, I'm going to type in optical flares and apply it to our layer here. And we're going to click Options. And I'm just going to use a preset here. They have some pretty good natural flares. We can use the, let's see here. This rim light, that looks a lot like a sun. So I'm going to hit OK. And we can't see it in the background here, so I'm going to go ahead and set our transfer mode to add. So now you can see that this is kind of beginning to look a lot like a sun. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set the sun to go on a consistent path. So I'm going to hit the keyframe button here at 0 seconds, and I'm going to scrub to the very end, and we'll go ahead and move it to the top of the sky here. But I don't want the brightness to be consistent the entire way. So I actually want the brightness to be kind of low here at the beginning. So I'm going to kind of maybe set it to maybe about 50. I can set a keyframe. And whenever the sun is peeking over the horizon, I want it to be at its max intensity. And so I think a good number for us here would be maybe about, I don't know, 140. So now we can see that it kind of grows, and we can see the sun peeking over the edge here. So this is looking great, but one obvious problem here is that you can see the sun where it's actually supposed to be behind the Earth. And so in order to fix this, I'm actually going to create a matte for our sun flare to use to basically say, don't appear behind the Earth. And in order to do that, I'm just going to go in and duplicate our daytime Earth layer. I'm going to drag it to the top. I'm going to hit M and go ahead and delete that mask layer. And so if we solo both of these here, we can see that we have our daytime earth layer and our sun layer behind it. And so the easiest way to do this is to simply, under track matte, set your sun to alpha inverted matte. And so if we scrub through here, you can see that it kind of peeks through and begins to glow. Cool. And so what I can do now is turn off the solo here. And so we can begin to see that our layer kind of comes in here and peeks over the horizon. And so what you can see here, there's actually a problem going on. There's a lot of veiling going on from the sun, and it's not actually popping up on our Earth here. And so what I'm going to do is, because our sun is taking its transparency from everywhere that this daytime Earth matte is not, I'm going to set a keyframe right about here for the opacity of this layer. And I'm going to move forward maybe about 3 seconds, and I'm going to turn the opacity actually to 0. And so what that'll do is, as our sun kind of peeks over the edge here, it's going to create a more natural veiling effect. And it'll cover the Earth. And so this looks a lot more natural for the way that we want our composition to look. All right, so the next thing that I'm going to do is create some cosmic dust to kind of appear over here. So to do that, I'm going to hit Command Y to create a new solid, and we'll just call this cosmic dust and hit OK. And I'm going to apply the fractal noise effect to this layer here. And I'm actually going to turn down the opacity and cut out a mask here just where the sun's peeking over the edge and nowhere else really. Right about there. And I'm going to go ahead and feather this out just so there's kind of a little dust in space. Even though this may not be a real occurrence, it just is going to add a little bit more to our finished product. So I'm going to go in and set our fractal type to dynamic twist, and I'm going to turn up our scale just a little bit here and turn up our contrast right about there. And we're going to set our blending mode to overlay. And turn down our opacity, maybe it's right about there, maybe about 20 or 21. So now we kind of see that as the sun peeks over, it kind of looks like it's lighting up little ambient particles in the air. And so we can set a keyframe to maybe right about there for the opacity. And at about 12 seconds, we'll set the opacity to 0. So this cosmic dust kind of fades in and is kind of illuminated the entire time. It just adds in a little bit more realism to our finished composition. All right, so the next thing that we want to do is actually put in our stars in the background, and that's actually very, very easy. And so we have our star layer here, and I'm just going to drag it to the very bottom of our composition. And that's probably way too many stars, so I'm going to go ahead and scale this up just a little bit and move it around till we find a good portion of the layer here, and maybe that's fine. And what I'll do to kind of cut down on these stars is I'm going to apply a curves effect, and I'm going to actually make a big sweeping curve here to where it's kind of beginning to cut out some of these extra stars that we don't want. Cool. And that actually may be too many stars still, so I'm going to actually go in and increase the contrast just a little bit more here, just to cut out any extra stars that may be lingering. There we go. It's looking much better. And so one thing that I know I want to do here is, now that we kind of have what looks like our finished composition together here, we want to add in some color correction to make it look more believable. So to do that, I'm going to go to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, and I'm going to apply the curves effect. And so I'm going to move this adjustment layer to the very top so that it's adjusting everything in our composition. And I'm going to increase the contrast a little bit. Bring it up to right about there. And you can see that this is really where your finished composition is really going to start to shape up. So this is looking pretty good. I actually think I want to go in now and change up the green just a little bit. I'm going to bring down the highlights in the green, but bring up the low lights. And I also think I want to adjust the blues a little bit. So maybe we want to bring up the blues here to bring up the water. Bring up the blues and bring down the highlights of the blues. Cool, that's looking pretty good. And one thing that I can see is our lens flare is kind of purple, and I don't know if that's the best option for this composition. So one of the cool things about using the Optical Flares plugin is you can just hit the options key here, and let's say we want to use some sort of different light here. We can just kind of browse around and see if we can find a good one for our project. Evening sun. Well, that's perfect. And click OK. All right, so now we can kind of see that our composition is looking a lot better with the purple taken out. And so we have the sun that rises and it kind of reveals the earth below. That's looking really good. And so I see that there's a lot of blue here, and I don't want that. So we can go in and change it one of two ways. We can go into our nighttime earth here and bring down the midtones just a little bit. And then we can also go to our adjustment layer and just turn down the curves layer. So now if we kind of play it back here, we can see our sun rising above the ridgeline, and the nighttime is slowly fading away. All right, so this is looking good. I like the coloring here. We could perhaps go in and apply a quick tint effect if we wanted to kind of cut out some of the saturation, and just kind of bring it up just a little bit to kind of add to the realism here, but it is all a personal preference and it depends on the project that you're working on. All right, so that's about it for this tutorial. If you want to download the free project files, go check out my website, cward.org, and you'll see a button there where you can download the free project files for this tutorial and many more After Effects tutorials. And you'll also see a few articles that I've written for Premium Beat and Rocket Stock there, along with some links to some really great video editing freebies. Thank you.